One thing that common sense dictates when it comes to backup guns is that your backup gun is as consistent as possible with your primary. So that just like if you were going to have a home gun and an office gun, or a home gun and a carry gun, maybe home guns staged in different rooms, you'd probably want to use exactly the same firearm, or at least the same type of firearm. Well, the same is true if you're going to carry two guns on your body. Now, one of the things that's launched against that is, well, it's hard for me to carry two full-size guns, or it's hard for me to carry two guns that operate the same way. Well, I'm a relatively small guy. This is not a very bulky. I'm not wearing a parka. I'm not in that kind of a situation. I'm actually carrying three firearms right now. And to be honest, the one that probably would be easiest to be seen is the small one. It's the one that's different. I'm going to go ahead and pull this cover garment off. And what we're going to take a look at is why this consistency is important. Not only consistency in operation, but also consistency of spare magazines. So if I've got a primary gun at the 4 o'clock, I've got a secondary gun here at appendix carry at the 1 o'clock, or maybe for you it's different. Maybe this is your primary and this is the one you're going to consider your secondary. Either way, these two guns work exactly the same way. They have the same type of trigger, they have the same type of magazine release in exactly the same place. There's no extra buttons or levers that I need to worry about, and the magazines are interchangeable. So in other words, my one spare magazine that works with my secondary gun will also work with my primary gun. That means I've got three magazines on my body which work with both of the guns that I'm carrying. Now if I go to the deep concealment option, this other concealed gun that I have inside of my pocket, what I realize is that now I've got some things that are very, very different. Okay, first of all, this has a manual safety that I have to actuate. So now if I'm in a worst case scenario where I'm going to a pocket gun, I'm going to a backup gun because my primary, whichever one of these would be my primary, has failed, I now have more fine motor skills that aren't the fine motor skills that I normally practice with my primary firearm. The trigger is also going to be very different. This is a single action gun on this tip-up Beretta, so the trigger is going to be very different from this gun. And obviously there's no way that I'm going to be able to get my primary magazine into this backup gun. It's not even the same type of ammunition. So there's no redundancy here whatsoever. There's no consistency. Yes, it is easier to carry this gun. It's easier to take this firearm and slip it into the pocket holster and know that it's there and have the option of going to it. But it doesn't do me nearly as much good as having two guns that are set up very, very similarly, that operate in exactly the same way, that have the same trigger, that take the same ammunition, that even take the same magazines. This sets me up much, much better to survive a true worst case scenario. So if you're going through the trouble of carrying a backup gun, you want to think about how consistent that backup gun can be with your primary. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have two guns that are practically the same, like these two Glocks, but at least have two guns that operate the same way. One option might be something like a modern striker-fired gun that's a double-stack gun, like the Glock, like the M&P, like the XD, and have a slimmer, maybe Walther PPS as your backup gun. That Walther PPS is going to give you exactly the same kind of function. You know, the one major difference there is going to be the magazine release, but the magazine release isn't something we're as worried about with a backup gun because we're probably not carrying spare ammo for the backup gun. But at least in the operations, you don't want to carry one gun that uses a manual safety, for example, and another gun that doesn't. You don't want to have one gun with a double action, single action type trigger and another gun that has a striker fired type trigger. If you want to talk about mixing and matching semi-autos and revolvers, of course, we have the same kind of situation. We've got a dramatically different trigger with the J-frames versus the modern striker-fired guns. However, it could be argued that they operate fundamentally the same. There's no safeties, there's no external levers. We don't have to worry about sweeping a safety off like I would with this small Beretta. When you get ready to carry two firearms, the more consistency you can have, the better prepared you're going to be to use either one when you need it most.